This is where we grew up. In raging storms and freezing temperatures. The west coast of Norway demands something special from who you are and what you wear. In these conditions, you need to trust your clothing. Function followed by form. We're beyond fashion. We are what legends and fishermen have been wearing since 1853.
Say kia ora koutou, everybody. Thank you for joining us online. Thank you to our amazing panelists who are here. Really sorry we cannot do this in person, and I so would have liked to have got this wonderful group of humans together because who knows what alchemy would have come out of this. But we are able to do it virtual. So whether you are here right now or going to be seeing this in the future at your leisure, welcome. And I'm really excited. This is the 39th of 40 events that we've held this year during the summit. It's the one that I have been really looking forward to seeing this fashion and where it's going and the progress that's been made, and asking the big questions and looking at textile in a completely different way. And tonight we're going to look at whole life cycle of a garment and where it's going. So thank you for participating in the 2021 summit. I'm going to now pass over to Jacinta Fitzgerald, who has been a wonderful supporter of us both last year and this year, and let everybody get on with the discussions. Over to you, Jacinta.
Thanks, Monique. Kia ora koutou, everybody. I'm Jacinta Fitzgerald. As Monique said, I'm going to set the scene before we get started and introduce our panelists. So I believe we all have the power to change the world by being mindful in what we buy, buying on purpose rather than on impulse. Antonio Guterres, the head of the UN, has declared a code red for humanity. The same organisation attributes 10% of global carbon emissions to the fashion industry. Couple this with the fact that the industry incinerates or landfills around about 73% of its materials, and that less than 1% of clothing is recycled into new garments, and you saw some of that in that video at the start. That's a pretty hefty footprint. We know we can't continue like this, burning through clothes, producing and consuming in the same way. So tonight we're going to talk about how clothes can be made and used differently to shift this paradigm. Sustainability is not a tick box on a label. It's a mindset, a way of thinking. It's about being considerate and deliberate, thinking about our actions as part of a bigger picture and realizing that everything we do has a flow-on impact on the people and the environment around us. What we eat, what we buy, how we look after it, how we use our things, and what we do with them when we no longer have a need for them. At an individual level, it's about personal responsibility for our footprint on the planet and society. And from a business level, it's also about responsibility. The fashion industry's status quo is not sustainable. It's a huge contributor to the climate and ecological crisis that we are facing, not to mention its impact on the workers and communities often being exploited around the world. The industry's current take, make, waste model relies heavily on virgin fossil fuel resources, both for energy and for materials like plastic, aka polyester. And it's reaching its limits. If we want a thriving planet with healthy people, then the fashion industry must change. It needs to move to circular and regenerative systems that don't rely on fossil fuels and don't pollute the environment or exploit people for profit. Luckily, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we have some incredible leaders in business who are working on doing just that. And we're going to hear from some of them tonight. Before we do, let me introduce you to my co-facilitator, Tim. Over to you, Tim Jones.
Hello, kia ora koutou. Yes, I'm Tim. I guess it's partially my fault that we're not operating in a beautiful room somewhere in Wanaka, because I'm based in Christchurch, and one of my fellow Cantabrians obviously decided to well, they did what they did, and I'm sure they're working their way through that. So yeah, many apologies. We're not doing this in front of you live, but we're going to try and make the most of this in the digital setting. And to get us started, we wanted to have like a really interactive kickoff to this session, but obviously we're here on Zoom again. So what we're going to ask you to do, I'm going to play some songs and I'm going to ask you some questions, and we'd like you to put some answers in the chat for us. So the first question we've got for you is, what do you, as someone attending this event tonight, what do you see as the big challenge for fashion? So what is some of the big challenges that you see facing the fashion world? And you can have a bit of fashion by David Bowie. Let's get you going. Can you hear the music? Is the music coming through? Excellent. Cool. So 30 seconds, put some answers in the chat for us. Maybe some of the panelists can put some answers in. Thank you, Zach. Undervalued labor, definitely. Good stuff. All right, we're getting you nice and warmed up. All right, so the second question we've got for you is, how old is the oldest item of clothing that you possess, and why have you kept it for so long? So there we go. And for this one, we can have a bit of old time rock and roll. Why not? So what's the oldest item of clothing you've got, and why do you still have it? $1937 pair of trousers. I think that's probably going to win. It's beating Zach for this 4 or 5 years. 1910s? Wow. Very cool. So it looks like 1910 was the oldest item of clothing we've got out there. That's how's that going? How do you look after that? That's got to be an interesting one to maintain. Or just has it been washed since 1910?
No, it kind of hangs in my wardrobe because I'm worried it'll disintegrate if I wear it. So
you need like the white gloves to go and open it and look at it. But hey, yeah, it's still going. Cool. And the last question, really just to sort of, I guess, help us maybe focus the conversations that we're about to have, but also morbid curiosity. Like, what's the one thing that you want to get out of this session? So is there like a burning topic or a burning question that you've got, or an idea that's rattling around your head? But yeah, what would be the one thing that you'd like to get out of the session tonight? There's old school 90s cheesy music, for those of you who might remember this one. Every day is definitely a school day, Perry, that's for sure. All right. Very cool. Actually, I should also add, Monique had this crazy idea that if we were doing this live in Wanaka, that Jacinta was going to come on stage. She was going to do her very powerful introductory talk and then introduce me, at which point I was supposed to burst out of a pile of secondhand clothing. So in many ways, is it a hot night in Wanaka? I think that might have been a bit of a sweaty experience for me, being under a pile of used woolen clothing to jump out of. So I'm actually secretly quite glad that we're doing this online.
I think we're here under false pretenses. We're all here to watch that, and we're expecting to still see it.
If only I had enough. I don't have enough clothes because I'm,
see.
a very simple clothes buyer. I would have had a pile of clothes behind me, and I would have done it in my office. But next time. Cool. All right. Well, let's get into the main events then, shall we? So first up, we've got a bit of a panel discussion, really focusing on designing garments to last. And for your delight and entertainment, we have Perry Drysdale from Untouched World. We've got Natalie Norman from Mons Royale and Alicia Watson from NISA. So yeah, we'll get stuck straight into it. Maybe we'll just float a question to Nat initially, and then if Alicia and Perry, if you want to jump in and sort of riff off the answers that we get, but I think we'll just run it like that. So Nat, how do you start designing a garment for long life?
Yeah, so I think you've got to start with circularity in mind or longevity in mind. And so then it's just considering the purpose of the garment and making sure that you're using the right fabric for that garment. So a lot of what we do at Mons is bike gear and clothes to be worn in the snow. And so they've got very specific purposes. Bike gear needs to be really durable, and clothes that you wear in the snow need to be really warm. So I think starting with a purpose in mind is one of the keys to that start of the design process.
Nice. Alicia, Perry, any advances on that?
For us, a huge amount goes into designing collections for sustainability, because the whole idea is to encourage people to have less garments in their wardrobes for longer, and then thinking about the fibres that go into the garments and will they deliver that. So if I think about, we use merino obviously as do Mons, but things like soybean, where you're using a part of the bean that's normally wasted. There's so much that you can do, and it's a really involved process doing it. Yeah.
Alicia, anything to add from your perspective?
I think being a direct-to-consumer brand that has a direct relationship with customers makes it a lot easier, because we can survey and talk with our customers at a click of the button. And that, I think, ultimately, that connection kind of ensures that you always, I guess, stay true to what actually works for people, because they'll tell you if it's not working and you do something about it.
Nice.
And so I think that that ultimate accountability is really really powerful, and we absolutely love that connection with customers. So we mainly sell online, and we've got quite a big social media presence, so people are often chatting to us through those channels. And then we also have a small shop inside our workshop where customers can come in and shop from us. So between those two things, we feel like we know our customers really well. And yeah.
A bit of transparency. There's nothing better than direct customer feedback to keep you on the straight and narrow. That is for sure. Yeah. So I guess how far back in the design process do you need to start thinking when you're, I guess, thinking differently from the industry standard, where it's like, hey, we just need to make, I guess, industry standards, we need to make a product as quickly and cheaply as possible and sell as many as we can. So how does that differ in terms of the whole process? like what other factors might you be taking into consideration at an earlier stage so that you create a better product that lasts longer?
I guess sustainable sourcing. If you're looking to source a material that you haven't worked with before, that's got certain sustainability credentials, that can lengthen your product development kind of circle to like 2 or 3 years. Like it's a long game. Especially if it's like quite a new product to market, you'll struggle to find suppliers. Then you find those suppliers, you have to go through testing. Testing falls over, you're back in square one. So you've massively narrowed your market when you're just looking at sustainable materials, and you that means you need more time and more patience, to be quite frank.
Harry's nodding her head there.
Yeah, no, it is it's a long pipeline, and it's actually not that easy. I don't want to put people off, but it is that part of the business takes quite a bit of resource, doesn't it, Alicia, to try and fish out those those items that you want to bring into your collection, go through the whole product testing and making sure that they're going to stand up, they're going to perform okay, and do all that testing. So it can't be done quickly. And if you do it quickly, which from time to time we're tempted to, it quite often bites you on the bum later on. Yeah.
Nice. I guess that's the thing, though. If doing good was easy, everyone would be doing it, and that's why not many people are choosing to do it, because it's hard, because it's kind of easy to take the quick sort of financially lucrative path. It's less easy to reinvent a complete system or way of doing things. So yeah,
that's why greenwashing is so tempting, I think, for so many brands, because it's actually very easy to make things sound environmentally friendly and put a green sticker on it and put a leaf symbol somewhere, and it's true that like whatever you've done might be 10% better than what you were doing before, and like for a lot of people that's enough, but it's much harder to really do things that are significantly deviating from industry standard, and so that's, yeah, you can see why greenwashing is an issue, because it's definitely not easy. Otherwise everyone would, the real change isn't easy.
100%.
It's not easy, but I think once you've done that work and once you've sourced those fibers and you've done the testing and you believe in it, those supply chain partners are super valuable. So once you've got good partners, going in and designing new fabrics and developing can become, a little easier, a little smoother. But yeah, sourcing the fibers, sourcing those good supply chain partners right at the beginning before you even start thinking about a fabric can be super tough.
I guess 2 questions in terms of supply chain, like how easy is it to find suppliers that are willing to go on a bit of a journey with you, and secondly, how do you prove that they are actually doing the stuff that you want them to be doing, in terms of potentially making sure that there's fair pay within the within the supply chain, or that they have got the right environmental and other social protocols in place? Yes, it's got, I guess, 2 questions on that one. Who wants to jump in on that one?
Yeah,
you go, Natalie.
I think it's certainly been a lot harder since we've all been stuck in New Zealand, but previously I think the supply chain partners are usually pretty open to developing new product, and so I think not a lot, but they'll go on a journey with you for sure if you're a good supply chain partner as well. But being stuck in New Zealand over the last couple of years, it's been tough, and usually you'd go to a trade show and you'd have meetings, and then you're visiting the factories every couple of years and building up those relationships, and you put things into work when you meet in person. But certainly it is a lot harder just on a WeChat call or on a Zoom call. It can be hard.
I guess oh yeah, Perry, sorry, yeah, you go. I was going to ask you a question on that.
The other challenge we have found when you're bringing a brand new fibre, a brand new material to market, is just that need to be able to have a reasonably slow, steady start until you know whether that is actually going to perform for that, for the length of time, that long pipeline. And most of the suppliers in the early stage development, like we make a lot of our own garments, so we can control that end, but in the yarn spinning and the fibre development and so on, for them to invest in something that's really brand new, they need some confidence that there's going to be some volume out the other end. And I think that's where some of the New Zealand companies struggle a little bit, is knowing that they're going to be able to deliver that volume out the other end.
Absolutely. That's what I was just building on what Perry was saying. Volume is key, and that's why some of the giant industry players actually can do some quite awesome things, and so I never like to discount or bag on anyone. Everyone's got their part to play, and if the change is going to, if like industry-wide change is going to come from anywhere, it's not actually going to be coming from the small players. It's going to be coming from those big players moving, hopefully inspired by some of the smaller ones, but us all together, we're not going to make that kind of huge change that's needed. That really has to come from those top dogs that actually manufacture most of the clothes in the world.
I think what we can do, though, is inspire those top dogs to demand change.
Yeah, absolutely.
From the rest of the world community.
And creating a customer base that cares, that those big brands kind of want to chase as well. I think that's a part of it. You have to show that it's commercially viable, that people are willing to pay more, that people care.
I think also too, some of the smaller companies are a little bit more agile. We can pick up on things like this and pivot to follow new technology and things a lot quicker than some of those bigger brands that, it's a big, slow process to change a supply chain or change a fabric. Can be easier for us. It's it's a bit of an advantage to some of the smaller brands.
Totally. And you can be a bit more risk tolerant, I guess, compared to a large corporate. If you're the new person, like, hey, I think we should drop everything and just use only natural fibers and create this really new idea. It's like, that's never what you want to say in a meeting in a big company. Not from my experience anyway, working in big companies. Perry, I'm gonna pick on you a little bit, because obviously congratulations to you. You've recently certified as a B Corporation, as well as just being a generally awesome company in general. But obviously supply chain and looking into the supply chain is one of the areas that you are audited on and asked some questions on. What was that like for you? Were you scoring well in that section? Was it something you had sort of pretty transparent and buttoned down?
I think we did okay in that one. We came out with, I think our highest marks were in environmental sustainability, which I think comes through in that area. We found the whole process really good. I think I touched base with you a while ago, a few years ago.
It was like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
We had the conversation.
I didn't
want to take time. Good things take time.
I didn't want to have a bar of it then, because I just thought that it's really hard when you're doing something like we are, which is really holistic, what I call holistic sustainability. We look at everything, including even down there in Wanaka. We've got our charitable trust that does amazing leadership programs for young adults, and there's quite a lot of engagement that we do that wasn't actually picked up in the questions in the early days, and we found that really, really hard to get a decent score, actually. So
it's the assessment has got better, I think, and it's better at recognizing this kind of stuff. Super cool. We've got a question from the audience, so why don't we get Sophie's question in? So Sophie's got a question: is what are the barriers to collaboration between brands in the New Zealand fashion industry when it comes to sharing ideas, helping each other through with supply chain, innovating and working with suppliers, etc.? Who wants to have a go at that one. Enjoy, well, maybe Natalie, because yesterday we spent 2 hours in a workshop, which Jacinta and I facilitated that one with a whole lot of, and Perry, in fact, sorry, you were there as well, with a whole lot of companies all in the wool industry. Maybe Natalie, you can talk a bit more about, or Natalie or Perry, you can talk a bit about, what that was all about as an example.
Yeah, I think that one of the barriers to working together is basically competition. And so sustainability, in a way, creates a platform, the perfect platform for brands and people across an industry to work together. And yeah, like Tim said, we had this fantastic wool industry workshop yesterday, and the energy coming out of it was amazing. And I think we just need the platform, really. We need the conferences, and we need the opportunity to get together and have the conversation. And I think we'll see some really positive change out of it when we all do start working together a little bit more.
I think a really good step forward has been the work you're doing, Jacinta, in Mindful New Zealand. How are you finding that?
Been dragged in.
Yeah, left field. Yeah, like really interesting. So Mindful Fashion New Zealand is basically a collective of about 68 fashion and textile businesses across the supply chain, and it's been really interesting to me to see how these businesses are coming together on common challenges and wanting to find a way to sort of solve common challenges. And really those are about sustainability of the industry in general. So yes, social and environmental impacts, but also things like skills and workforce development, because in New Zealand we have critical skills shortages. So the sustainability of the industry is really important, as well as ensuring the social and environmental impact is considered. So yeah, through Mindful Fashion, it's been pretty impressive to see some of these businesses like working together on working groups. Alicia's on one of our working groups for the skills development, and just seeing businesses start to talk to each other in a pre-competitive way, which to your point, Nat, I think that's a really important point to get, about getting consumer facing businesses together to work together.
It's really cool that we're seeing that, and definitely, going into the workshop yesterday with the wool, as I coined it, so I'm going to use it again, the coalition of the wooling. I think it's what you need to run with.
I love it.
It was really good to see the openness to want to work with each other. And I think for me, like I do a lot of work with companies, helping them find organizational purpose at a higher level. And one of the key differentiators of an organization on purpose is when you're not competing against your competitors. Because if you're competing against your competitors, it's a zero-sum game. Whereas what you need to be doing is competing against a bigger challenge. And that's seemingly is happening pretty well in the fashion industry. But what do you feel is driving that? Because has it always been this way? I mean, Perry, you've been in the fashion industry probably the longest out of the sort of four of us on the call here. Has it always been easy to work with other people, or has it happened recently?
I don't think it has been easy. I've heard quite a few of the brands or the designers that are involved in Mindful New Zealand, for example, say that they have found it really hard to pick up the phone and talk to other people in the industry. In our part of the industry, we find everyone seems to be quite happy to work together to a degree. And I think that's been from way back. So yeah, it is just that old big competitive thing, is that, it's you work hard for your competitive advantage, and you kind of got to hang on to what you can to you want to try and help others as much as you can, but you still need some sort of competitive advantage to survive. So yeah.
How about Natalie or Alicia? What are you seeing?
Sorry.
No, you go, Alicia.
Well, I'm Sam, who's also on this call. We are meeting up tomorrow to hang out on the beach. So, I'm sure we'll talk about fashion stuff then. And just since it's on the NISA advisory board as well. So there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of mentoring and support, but maybe less collaboration. if that makes any sense. But I think they're just as valuable as each other because you're helping each other to kind of thrive and grow. But I think where the pointy end of collaborations is actually around time. And I think that the fashion industry is like not a lucrative industry by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I think the average profit margins over the industry would be incredibly low. So everyone's incredibly time poor. And I think that's often the nail in the coffin for doing really transformative things together. And I don't know what the solution to that is, unfortunately. And that's where mindful fashion comes in, and really kind of like those peak bodies really kind of bringing us together is really helpful, because often you just need that tap on your shoulder.
Yep.
You're like, hey, there's that person over there doing that cool thing, go join them. And you're like, oh,
Yeah. Oh, what a crazy idea. Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
When you're so focused in your own thing, sometimes you just don't have the time to think about what other people are doing. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Natalie, I mean, yesterday we had you and Icebreaker in the same room, you know, talking about how to do stuff together. It's like, wow, what a crazy idea. What are your sort of thoughts on this area?
I think historically the rag trade has been brutally competitive, and that's probably been the biggest barrier to brands, especially working together. But I think also maybe the outdoor clothing space is a little bit more open to working together. I've really noticed, like my time at Mons, like we get emails all the time from other brands asking questions, asking for introductions, and it seems a lot more open. And I think also the maybe slightly younger generation coming through, you know, they have a much more collaborative approach to the way they work, which I think is really nice. And I think that just having those younger people in the industry all working together a little bit more, reaching out on social media, and they're far more networked and connected. It seems to be having a bit of a change too, which is super positive.
Nice. We had another question from Olivia in the chat related to this. The question we've just been talking about is, what are some exciting changes that we can expect from these conversations and collaborations from business? Maybe Natalie or Perry, there was some pretty exciting ideas being pushed around yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were, and that T word did rise in front of my eyes yesterday, the time. You know, all of us are so just incredibly busy, and some of these really exciting ideas that we came up with yesterday that actually do need to be implemented and do need to go forward. I think that we can. I don't know what you think, Natalie, but you know, there was all sorts of ideas about what wool can be used for and how we can reprocess it, and you know, different ways of looking at that. And that it actually has to happen, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was incredible energy yesterday with ideas around what the best version of circularity could look like in the New Zealand wool industry, and what we hope to get out of that, and the change that we hope to see would be a community or an industry group working together towards a strategy or a plan to get some funding to really implement some circularity initiatives, which would be amazing. And then I think as you know, more New Zealand companies sign up to mindful fashion and initiatives like that, then I think we'll just see brands and businesses working together more to reduce their impact or reduce the impact that the fashion industry creates.
Just, I guess one quick contrary word, I think, is that sometimes competitive pressures make you more sustainable. So you think about how brands work, and you know, another brand has just declared that they're carbon zero, so you're like, oh god, we have to be carbon zero as well. Like, it's not all that mixture of competition and collaboration is actually really healthy, and it often pushes us to be better as well. So yeah, just a bit of a shout out for
that's true. Yeah,
totally. And I guess like a great example that I can think of recently is Adidas and Allbirds working together on recycled, I think it was recycled plastics in their supply chain. So, you know, it's, yeah, it's 100% right. As soon as, I mean, we're definitely seeing this in the consumer, in some consumer brands, not fashion yet, but definitely cosmetics, food and beverage. There are now so many brands going through the B Corp certification that pretty soon it's just going to be table stakes. It's like, if you're not certified, people look at it and go, why not? You know, you're claiming here that you're, you know, vegan, you know, all natural made, yet you're not a B Corp, yet this product over here is. And so, yeah, I think it's a really interesting tension. Yeah, that's quite cool. Yeah, Sophie in the chat was saying we need a collaborative fund to make this all work, and yeah, that was something that we definitely talked about yesterday. Was, I think, as a collective, you know, going to the government or other bodies and sort of saying, look, we've got some really cool ideas here, but we just need some cash and maybe a bit of funding to maybe get the resource to make it happen. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, there were so many cool ideas on the call yesterday, and I guess Jacinta and I we're non-wool industry people, and it was quite interesting being outsiders on the call, just seeing how collaborative you were, because we were maybe a little bit wary that it could be quite tense with people not wanting to talk and share stuff. So it's good to see.
It's all very professional. I think it's probably worth mentioning too that I think a lot of New Zealand brands and businesses have really recognised that they can't do things on their own. You know, we're just not going to be able to achieve the reduction in our impact by doing it on our own. To scale these ideas up, or we're going to need each other to scale these ideas up and actually implement something positive. So I think just that awareness too, that we're not big enough on our own to create the significant impact.
Yeah. Was it that old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're all about right now.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I guess like natural materials, that's something that you're all keen on. How, why, like, I mean, yeah, it's clearly, again, it's like it seems ironic, it's the non-natural choice is to use natural products because we're so used to having synthetics around us. But yeah, talk me through how you all came about to be involved with sort of more natural materials in your products.
For us, it was a no-brainer right from the beginning, because I grew up on a sheep farm in a very picturesque part of New Zealand, and I just had the vision that I wanted to take some of that New Zealand nature and sell it, introduce it to other parts of the world, and basically sell the dream, as it were. And right from then, I just think that wool, which we were talking about yesterday, but it is the best fibre there is. So why not use it? It's, you know, we do use cotton when wool, doesn't cut it for that particular use, but cotton doesn't hold its dye as well as wool does, and wool you can wear, sheep live happily in the desert where it's freezing at night and hot in the day, so wool will take you pretty much anywhere. So why wouldn't you? And for us, it's an absolute no-brainer. So we're constantly looking for other natural materials to use. Predominantly now looking at waste streams where they can be used, but also thinking about the circularity, because up until now, it's not possible to recycle a mixture of an oil-based fibre and a natural-based fibre. So we can't blend those together. So that's our journey.
Nice. Alicia, what have you got?
So we use our biggest selling products are bras and underwear. So we use 95% organic cotton and 5% elastane for those garments. A few people over the years have questioned why we blend it with elastane. And the reason is basically that it increases the lifespan of the garment by 3 or 4 times. So if you imagine what underwear, like if you imagine a t-shirt going baggy after 2 or 3 years, you can just imagine how much shorter that is for a really tight fitting garment like underwear. you just end up throwing them away all the time, or having very, very sad underwear that kind of hung off you, which also is no one wants either. So I think my own personal take on sustainability is very much around the duration, the lifespan of the garment. I think there's this real focus on materials, which kind of obscures the point that anything that we make is actually harmful to the environment. And actually the best way to be environmentally friendly is just to get the most life out of every garment that you can. And that's why, like, you know, you can get that from Kmart. If you wore that for 5 years, yeah, that would be great. That would be like an environmentally friendly garment in my books, because it's getting away from that cycle of wearing for a few months, throwing out and rebuying. And that's, I think, where the true harms lie in my mind. Other people have different values and different ways of looking at it, but that's how I see it. And then we also do swimwear and activewear, and those are and socks as well. But socks we use merino, and then swimwear and activewear we use nylon mixed with elastane, and those are the two kind of garments that you wouldn't necessarily want natural fibers for, because they you know, like, no one wants to drown in cotton swimwear, for example. So yeah, that's the performance-based fabrics are, I think, a bit of the thin edge of the wedge. It's quite a struggle, but we're always looking for. That's why we kind of go down the recycled nylon route, and that's, I'm hoping in 10 years there'll be something even better than recycled nylon, you know. But yeah, that's where we're at the moment, and we're really proud of that. And I think it's just about kind of telling that story about wearing garments for a long time and treasuring what you have, rather than saying this fiber is good and this fiber is bad, because I think that always kind of oversimplifies the issue.
Yep, I think you're right, and it's with all these complex, I guess, challenges that we face as consumers or customers. It's like, do I buy an electric car? Well, actually, you know, it's got the batteries. What happens to the batteries? And then you go, well, I don't know. And then the people selling you diesel have lied to you about the emissions. Well, now I don't know about that. And it's really, really hard for the customer to actually know what, like, am I making a good decision? And even yesterday on the wool group, you know, we were kind of looking at, well, we need to be better at presenting the evidence of the total life emissions of the wool, not just the manufacturing of the wool product versus manufacturing of a synthetic product. And yeah, it's really, really hard to get good, clear answers, I guess, in any of this. So yeah, on that, the answer you had there, from anonymous attendee, we have a question about related to the how old is your oldest piece of clothing. The question is, what is the expected lifespan of an article of clothing from a producer's perspective, and how does that compare to reality through use?
Oh, I think that's a hard question to answer, because it also depends on frequency of use.
Yep.
But yeah, that's a
I've got a top that I quite often talk about, made in our merino, that was one of the first tops that we made when we were trialing the merino we call mountain silk. And I have worn and worn and worn and worn and worn and worn that top. And it's one of those, I was doing a lot of traveling, and you often need more than one of something. It might be in the wash when you go away on your next trip. So I've actually had two tops exactly the same. One had our old logo in it, and one had our newer logo in it. And the only way I can tell the difference is by looking at the logo. It's the same color, the same size. Both are absolutely perfect. And I had a letter on Friday from someone who sent me a photo of his 7-year-old garment that he wears all the time, he says, and it's still in perfect nick. So I think it depends what you're doing, what the garment's for, how many times it goes through the wash, and what sort of abrasion it's getting during the wear. But certainly our philosophy too, Alicia, is that to have garments that are going to stick around for a long time, and not to be so many, because there's environmental impact on taking 100% pure organic fibre through the whole process. And and into a garment. You can't do that without impacting the environment, even if the fibre itself seems quite pure. Yeah.
When we're developing fabric and garments, our kind of testing standard is that we test everything for pilling, colour fastness, abrasion for 20 washes, and our expectation is that there would be no change to the garment or the fabric after 20 washes. So then after that, we would expect to start seeing some kind of change to the garment, but our baseline is 20 washes, that no change.
Nice. We've also had a couple of comments. Well, Fiona was talking about, how much you might repair it as well. And was it, Natalie, was it Mons who have got a repair option you've now added or you're launching?
Yeah.
Talk us through what that looks like.
A big part of our sustainability philosophy is longevity of product. I think it's critical. And, when you're skiing or biking or tramping, quite often if you've got a cuff on a garment, we have a lot of thumb loops in our product, the cuff can be the first place to go. So we have just launched a cuff replacement program, and the feedback on that has just been amazing. It's super simple. You just buy your cuff and chop off the old one, stitch on the new one. It's a bit of you can get a black one, or you can just get a lucky dip on colour, so it can be like just a random colour on your old top, but it's just a super rad way of extending the life of a product that you love. And it's and part of our program, our care and repair program, is just building on that and bringing in some crash repair kit, and then just building that out as we go through and get new initiatives. Nice.
I bought a belt. It was you all might remember it was a brand called OTC that was based in Queenstown. This was in 2004. It was a really, really cool belt. It was like a thick I guess it's cotton. I don't know. It was kind of like it had like an airplane belt release on it, but it was like a really sturdy fabric belt, and it's lasted me since 2004. And about 3 or 4 months ago, it was just getting really unraveled at the top on the back, where it's obviously rubbed against the belt loops on my jeans for so many years. And I took it into one of the alterations places in the local shopping mall to home, and I handed it over. I said, look, all I want is, can you just basically put some stitching around the top and bottom, just strengthen that. And the lady looked at me and said, why can't you just go and buy a new one? And I thought, I'm coming to you. I've specifically come out of my way to ask you to repair it, and you're asking me to not do that. It's like,
I think
you can buy a new one for less than this. It's like, but I don't want a new one. I want this one.
Yeah. Well, I think that's awesome. Like, you have these connections with products that you love, you get pieces of clothing, and I think especially in our industry, when you're using product for leisure activities that you love, and maybe you've just had amazing ski holidays or bike trips or biking with friends, and you've got this connection with these products that you love, and you always have a good time wearing, or a beautiful shirt, or it can be anything. You don't want to lose that connection. And I love that repair philosophy for that reason, so you can keep those products,
keep the memories.
Yeah.
And I think that came through in the chat answers. Like, most people had some kind of connection to a relative, or there was something important. And I think that, to me, really demarcates old, I guess, an older myself. Like, what would your grandfather or grandmother think about keeping something versus this color isn't in this season, therefore I'm going to biff it and get a new one. Having that deeper connection to something that has a bit of meaning to you.
I think that that's such a big part of the sustainability philosophy. If you buy clothes that you absolutely love and they fit you perfectly, and you've got that connection, you are not going to throw it away on a whim.
Cool. We're almost at time for the session. Is there a final question from the audience, or is there a final sort of pearl of wisdom that each of you can leave the people tuning in with? What would be the one thing that you would ask them to do or recommend, perhaps?
Well, I might just continue on with what I was just saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think that
repair, reuse.
I am a big one for just making sure that you absolutely love everything that you buy, and that the fit is perfect for you, you love the color, and that you don't just buy things on impulse, that you really just buy with intent.
Nice.
I'd support that. I would just say use less, which is the same thing.
Yeah.
I would say, like, I guess feeling an emotional connection to clothes before you buy them is a really healthy way to go. Like, you love the story of the garment, you love how they're made, you love the brand, just any of those. If that's your kind of expectation, you're going to buy really well and you're going to love that thing. So just I think approaching things from that perspective of passion rather than just being like, I need a white top, I will buy a white top, you know.
Yep.
Just an added layer of depth.
Nice. Love it. Cool. Fiona's chimed in and said, she's given us some evidence here. Extending the life of your garments by an extra 9 months of use would reduce the carbon, water and waste footprint by around 20 to 30%. So there you go. Sophie says, thank you all for the work you're doing and for sharing your passion with us. And Wow has told us that they love the conversation. So thank you for your pearls of wisdom. And indeed, thank you. So round of applause for all the amazing work that you ladies are doing. Cool. Jacinta, back to you. It feels like we're doing the Eurovision Song Contest. Come in, Sweden. What is the score?
Am I Sweden?
I don't know. You can be wherever you want. You can pretend, you know.
I'm going to give a bit of a long introduction to the next panel discussion that we're having, which is around what creates value for resale. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I buy, and this very much builds on what Natalie, Perry, and Alicia have all just said, actually, which is really cool. It's all about a holistic philosophy of sustainability and buying what you love, and really thinking about that question of, am I making a good decision? So I've always loved the power of clothes. They protect us, but they also have this amazing storytelling ability. They convey an attitude, make a statement. For me, like, my mother taught me to sew when I was growing up, and so I grew up making my own clothes so that I would have something unique, something individual, rather than hand-me-downs from my older siblings. And I had a lot of those older siblings, so I had a lot of hand-me-downs. And making my own clothes really gave me an understanding and appreciation of the work that is involved in making a garment. So much work, and I don't know about anyone else out there who sews, but many, many, many hours of unpicking too. And because I'd invested so much time into making these clothes, I really learned to care for them, and I learned to understand their value, which I think for me was like a very important part of my sort of clothing education. And that led me on into a career in the industry. What I see as one of fashion's biggest sustainability challenges, and it's already been spoken about by the panel as well, is the volume of clothes that we produce and that we consume every year. So a figure I found out of the US says that the average consumer in the US buys 68 garments every year, which is more than one a week. When we know that at least 73% of the clothing and textiles that we produce end up in landfill, sometimes only after being worn once, it's really clear that we need to do things differently. And so I believe that we need to focus on making our clothes in a safe, regenerative way that doesn't harm people or the planet, and then that we need to buy what we love and buy things that are quality and durable, that we need to institute repair and reuse models to keep those clothes in use, and that we need systems in place so that the materials from those clothes can be captured and used again at the end of their life. So that's kind of the utopia, right? How do you as shoppers and people looking to buy clothes, how does that fit with a holistic view of sustainability that we're working towards? As I said before, I don't think it's a tick box on a label. I know B Corp is a circle, so I feel safe in saying that. I think it requires a mindset shift and a broader set of tools. So for me, when I am thinking about buying new clothes, there's 3 kind of key things that I do, or that I am mindful of when I'm purchasing, and I wanted to share those because some of them might resonate. So the first thing I do is I get informed. I learn what I can about the piece of clothing that I'm going to buy. I read the label, I check the website and social media, I ask store staff, I use the online chat. I did that this morning when I was looking at a pair of Allbirds running shorts. I wanted to know more information, so I asked them. They had to email me back some answers, but I got what I needed to know. So it's, you know, it's cliche, but it's true. I think it's really important to do your research and find out about the company that you're supporting and where you're putting your money, and make sure you're making informed decisions. And the good thing is, like, lots of brands, including the 3 brands that are talking just a bit earlier, are sharing the stories about their clothes and who makes their clothes, and providing information about the fabrics and materials on their website. So a lot of that information is out there now. And that gives us all the option, right, to go behind the scenes and really check out what's happening beyond that piece of clothing that we're looking at. The second thing I do, which really speaks to what Nat was saying, is I buy what I love and I make sure that it's a good fit, so that I will continue to love it and I'll want to wear it because it makes me feel good. And tied in with that is that I always go for natural fibers, unless it's a performance requirement that you know, might require a synthetic. Unfortunately, at the moment for swimwear, that is the case. So I always try and prioritize, for me, natural fibers. I really like how they feel. I really like the way that they are regenerative and renewable in the way that they grow. But yeah, it always comes back to, is it something I love? Does it fit me well? If those things all tie in together, then I'm actually going to look after it and want to keep it in use for as long as possible, because it makes me feel good. And I think that's a really important part of the conversation to consider. And the third thing I do is I really think about any money that I spend as an investment. And I suppose this speaks to the point of buying, you know, for intent or on purpose. I buy the best quality I can afford at the budget that I've got at the time. And I think about the cost per wear of what I buy, rather than it might cost me $99 or $199 or $49. I think about, you know, how long am I going to have this in my wardrobe? How long do I want this to last? You know, that might end up being $1 or 50 cents or 10 cents per wear. So I kind of try and think about it like that. And I buy for longevity. So for me, that means I try and buy things that are not really trend driven, so that I won't feel silly wearing them next week or next year. And I also really think about, you know, if they're made out of quality fabric, they'll last for a long time, or quality construction. So those things are really important to me. And then just one final thing that I'll say about the way that I buy is that actually mostly what I buy is secondhand, because there's a lot of amazing secondhand clothes out there, and because of the amount of work that I've just talked about that is required to, like, do the research on the garments, if I can buy something hand, I tend to do that, because there's so many garments in the world already in circulation. So it's a really good way to get something a little bit unique, and you know, it's quite fun to hunt around. You know, when you're looking for a new shirt or a new top, it's quite fun to hunt around and see what you can find that might be different to what's in the stores. So in a nutshell, for me, it's about just being really mindful of my footprint and my handprint on the world around me when I shop, and just buying on purpose. Yeah, I would say. Over to you, Tim. That was my little how I buy spiel.
Very good. And I think it echoed a lot of what we were just talking about, which is super cool. Yeah, I definitely, for me, I'm all about the investment. I think that's big. That's been a big thing for me. It's like you say, how many wears am I going to get out of this? Not just what's the upfront cost. And I think you can apply that to, broadly speaking, thinking sustainably across anything that you buy. Is like, actually, how long is it going to last me? Or is it a flash in the pan? Cool. Certainly no flash in the pans coming up. We have Mathilde from Wastebusters and Lillian from Mons Royale joining us. We'll just get them to put their videos on. There we go. And come and join us. Hello. How's it going?
Hi. Good. How are you going, Tim?
Excellent. And so we've got a bit of a demo session coming up. So you've probably got the hardest gig of the evening, trying to show us some stuff on Zoom, as opposed to being able to show us some stuff beautifully on a stage in Wanaka. Who's going to go first? We didn't really sort this one out. Or are you going to both go together? Over to you.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool to maybe bounce some ideas around together.
Sure.
So got any questions specifically?
Sure, you can start if you like. Yeah.
So I guess, well, the topic that we're discussing really in this second panel event is what creates value for resale. So we'll start with you, Lillian. What does value for resale mean to you? What does that look like in the fashion world?
Yeah, well, I guess for me, I'm sort of specifically talking on repair and how that can contribute to reselling a product and maintaining its value, I guess. And I guess for me, it's sort of like a resurfacing art, the whole thing of craft, and it's been like recreated in a contemporary way that's sort of giving like another layer to the garment. So I think the art that's added to something that's already there is giving it that extra value. It's kind of, yeah.
There's the name. There's a Japanese the concept where they repair typically items of like crockery or things like.
Yeah.
What's that? Do you know what it's called?
So there's a sewing technique called Japanese boro, and it's traditionally from Japan, and it was actually in the fisheries that they used to have all this outerwear, and it would just wear out so quickly because of the heavy wear use, and their way of fixing it was layering heaps of extra fabric behind and then stitching through new layers. But they did it in such a beautiful way that it actually created like a whole new pattern through the stitch on the external of the garment. So they'd have jackets that would be passed down through the families with just so much detail and layers.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Is that something that you're maybe then is this what you're kind of trying to emulate at Mons with the cuff repair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's that whole thing of being able to have a garment, as everyone's talked about tonight, and being able to give it that longer life, and especially when you are emotionally invested in it, or you do find that sentimental value, being able to have these tools to allow you to create more longevity in these garments is a pretty wonderful thing to have.
Nice. Now, Matilda, you're from Wastebusters.
Yes.
For those people that don't know the amazing mahi that Wastebusters do, maybe just give us a little overview of what Wastebusters is all about. Clearly, it's about busting waste, but
yeah, not only. So we're a community-based social enterprise, and we are based on 2 sites, one in Wanaka and the other one in Alexandra. And our goal really is to try to go towards zero waste. So we attack the big mountain through different angles, and the angle that I want to talk to you about tonight is the reuse side of things. So we have a massive amount of clothing that is coming to us every day. To give you an idea of the volume, we're talking about 15 to 20 trolleys full of clothes coming every day just on one site in Wanaka. So about half of that is actually making it to the shop, unfortunately, which is still a good percentage compared to other op shops. We're really lucky to have pretty high quality clothing. The other half is either going to go to smaller community centers throughout the country. They're going to be made into rags. Some of them are going to Vanuatu as well. And unfortunately, a portion of it is going to go to the landfill. So what I thought I would do is to do a bit of training for you, because all our staff is trained to make sure that we make the most of what we receive. And you will see there is a lot of things that are just a big pattern for us, things that we receive every day that unfortunately we cannot keep in the loop. So I thought I would give a few tips of what to look for.
That'd be amazing.
I've got a few examples here. I thought I would start with something that a lot of people love to buy, and it is definitely what we're saying about an impulse buy, things that you don't necessarily need, which is baby clothes. So everyone is always organizing those baby showers or wanting to send a package back home for this new baby that everyone is waiting. And unfortunately, the amount of baby clothing that we have is absolutely overwhelming, especially things that are under 3 months old. The volumes that we're talking about are horrendous. So I thought I would give you a few examples. Those colors like that are super, super large, after 3 months, they can't be used anymore. So something like that arrive in our shops, you see, the rest of the clothing is perfectly fine, but because it's so large here, we just can't reuse it. So I always recommend to anyone who wants to buy any baby clothing to use things with zips like that, or things like that you can just undo on the side. So it's a small thing, but we've got those little wee clothing coming in. We probably have about 50 every single day. Wow. So those ones cannot be passed on. Another thing with babies is with everything being, with a very specific gender, it gets really hard to pass on. So another advice as well is to buy as much as you can, things that are gender neutral, so they're easier to pass on. Something else that we have a lot of, we were talking about wool earlier, and I was listening quite carefully, because wool can be a little bit of a yes or a big no for us. Why? Because some wools, and especially merino wools, they're quite easy to wash. So even if you wash them at 40 degrees, they're still going to keep their shape. Unfortunately, it's not the case of many wools. So we also have a lot of things that arrive in our op shops. They're just completely shrinked. So it might sound anecdotal, but to all the grandmothers that are knitting for little ones, or for people who are, looking at creating things, it's something to consider. We've got so many coming in that it is actually quite significant. Another thing that we were talking earlier, sorry about the very old bra, is the quality of of underwear. So we've got a lot of underwears that are coming in that are just like, you can tell the fabric is so poor that the shape is still here. It could be still used. There's no holes, but the fabric is just so poor quality that we cannot keep it in the loop as well. Another wee message that I thought I would pass on is to anyone who owns a business, to please, please, please refrain from embroidering every single thing. So I've got actually quite a lot of those ones, beanies, caps. It is a big issue for us, because if you've got an item that is embroidered, we can't really legally sell it back for health and safety reasons. So we can imagine some badges, or even like a Velcro system. So even if someone is not working there anymore, they can keep on using their plain blue t-shirt, but they can take off the Velcro or the badge. So that's something that is really significant, because no one wants to wear blah 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 plumbing. So
not even the people that work for the company sometimes want to wear the
exactly. Along the same line, there is all those sport event items. They're a big issue for us. So we are luckily having conversations with some of the event organizers locally to try to find solutions. But I think everyone is first really proud when your little one is finishing a challenge or whatever it is. But then we end up 6 months later with a whole lot of those items that unfortunately no one wants to be a finisher from 2014. So it's something that can especially be a problem if it's a fabric that cannot be made into rags.
Because they're normally sort of poly based.
Yes,
products,
exactly. So it's a double problem, is that we can't even recycle them into rags. And on the same line, there is something that is for Christmas that everyone really is tempted to do, and I saw that it's quite fashionable online at the moment on a lot of websites, is anything that is personalized. So personalized item with the face. Here you've got the face of the child plus his name. Once the child decided he doesn't want that anymore, good luck on finding a Leo with green glasses.
Yes.
So refraining from doing those things that can come from a good intention. I think I've got one here that is about this one is about blood donation. So it comes from a good intention, but we have such a big amount of those items down the line that it's something that is worth mentioning.
And of course, tomorrow morning you'll probably have an influx of All Blacks jerseys when Wales beat them.
Yes.
Tomorrow morning. I stand by for that. I think it's going to be happening.
But weirdly enough, this one's always resale, so I'm not too worried. And one of the last things that I wanted to show you as well is these bad guys. So those ones are actually plain and black, but cheap shoes is one of our biggest nightmares. We've got an amount of shoes that is just, I just don't know what's happening. I mean, I know that when I got pregnant, my feet did grow a little bit, but apart from that, you would think that people would have the same size all through their life. But it doesn't seem to be the case because we receive so many shoes. So if you go to a wedding, or if your child is going to prom, please make sure that you borrow, that you go secondhand or whatever, because it really breaks our heart to have to throw away this beautiful-ish pairs of shoes. So that's something that we have too much of as well. And finally, the last thing that I wanted to show you is something that we have a lot of, and actually that is a quality problem for sure, is those pairs of jeans that you can see are completely stretched. So we've got a lot of low quality jeans that are coming in. They're completely highly stretched and that we cannot resell at all. So now that I've told you all the things not to buy,
yeah, don't buy anything.
because
if in doubt,
they can't stay in the loop. I thought I would just give a few things that are surprisingly good for us to have. So one of the surprisingly good things for us to have is your grandparents' clothing, because of course, quite often they're actually higher quality than the clothing that we have currently. So and also I'm always surprised to see that the new generation of 18 and 20 years old are like fighting to have this fruit of the loom jumper that my mom forced me to wear 20 years ago. So it's quite interesting to see that high quality items, no matter the shape, the size, it stays in the loop and we see them, and there is a resale market for it.
Nice.
Yeah.
How about you, Lillian? Have you got any sort of top hacks or resources? For like, I mean, I try and repair my socks. If I get, it's always my big toes that pop through. Like, I'll darn them really badly, but hey, I'm going to maybe get another year or two out of them. So Lillian, what have you got? Have you got any tips or things that you're doing to keep your products, your own clothes going longer? Oh, you're muted. There we go. Now we can hear you.
So yeah, care and repair is definitely something that's sort of propped up in my world more recently, or just something that I've become more conscious of. And I think understanding how to care for your garments actually has such a huge impact on the longevity of it, which we sort of, in our fast-paced ways of consuming and living, is really hard to stop and do. And having natural fibers, wearing natural fibers is actually a really great way to start that as well, because you are able to care for them in a more sustainable way, like not washing as much and so on and so forth. And also like and I think washing is definitely a big one. Like things as simple as spot cleaning rather than washing the whole garment, or if you've got a cotton t-shirt or merino and you can hang it out in the air to dry air out for the day rather than washing it. Just little things like that that also will sort of increase the lifespan of it, because you're not giving it that hammering and that washing as often. Are definitely sort of something that's worth thinking about for sure. And yeah, just on the repair front, it's just sort of, I guess this is sort of goes back to what Nat and the others talked about, just that initial purchase of really wanting and loving the product, and then you want to care for it, and then you want to fix it, and you will extend that whole life, and you'll have that sentimental and emotional attachment to it. So I think that's sort of all interlinked in some ways, but those are sort of my main thoughts when it comes to trying to make things last a little bit longer.
Nice. There's been some comments and suggestions around sort of product stewardship, and I guess, you know, the product manufacturer being responsible for particularly the end of life. What happens? Yeah, is that, I guess, Mathilde, you're kind of picking up that on behalf of the manufacturer right now. Yeah, thoughts from maybe go to Lillian first. Like, is that where does that sit with you as someone in the fashion industry? Is that something that you feel you should be, you know, concerned about or involved with?
Sorry, were you asking us like take back for the initial person that makes the
yeah so at the end of life, when you know they've had the cuff repair and it's been worn 1,000 times on amazing ski fields all around the South Island, and it's like, actually this is just done now. Yeah, do you feel that as a manufacturer, product manufacturer, reseller or retailer rather, that you have a responsibility, or is that not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that's sort of becoming more spoken about with this whole circular concept, and I think repair is a great start to that as well, because it's one thing repurposing it or turning it into something else, but actually being able to have that for a longer period of time is even more beneficial and uses less resources. So I think to initially start with the repair thing is definitely, I personally find it very important, but I mean, it's such a huge amount of resources then to go to the repurposing side of it. But I guess that's something that we're having to incorporate in the initial design and the whole process. So from my understanding and my knowledge, it's definitely like a new concept, or something that it's very like prevalent, and a lot of people are talking about how to achieve it for sure.
Nice.
And I think that it's also we do a lot of work around that as well, because when people drop off at a recycling center, it makes them have this feel good, you know, oh, it's gonna stay in the loop, and it can be actually quite deceiving, because the volumes are so big that even though we're doing repair cafes that are really successful and so on, the volumes that we're working with are quite overwhelming, and this is why there is the quality of clothing, but there is also the quantity that is, like, for a small town, not that small anymore, like Wanaka, the volume that we have to deal with is so massive that unfortunately we wish we could repair things, repatch things and so on, but we just don't have the capacity, even though we are pretty performant reuse center.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? It's I know, like, you know, again, you sort of say people feel pretty virtuous putting their clothes maybe in the recycle bin, you know, at the recycling depot here in Christchurch, or there's various clothes banks around town, and the amount of that material that ends up as rags in Africa, where they don't actually want them or need them, and there's just a volume. Yeah, it seems like there's sort of two ends really. It's like, yeah, getting the manufacturers, retailers involved, but also really educating the consumers on. And we do see, I think we do seem to be getting there. There was definitely, again, you know, on the wool session yesterday, and even just what the first three panelists were saying, is like, buy less, buy better. That message needs to go to the consumer, but I guess it's hard for the consumer when they're being bombarded on a daily basis of buy more, buy more. So yeah, I guess there's work to be done at both ends, yet in the middle we're all humans. So I don't know, maybe there's something there. Any questions from people listening in? Oh, here we are. We've got a question from Wow. What's the volume that comes through Wastebusters, and how much of that can you actually resell? So yeah, what's the total volume of clothing coming in versus how much do you actually manage to resell?
Yeah, so on clothing, is about since about 10 years now, which is interesting, is about 50% of what we receive and 50% of our income. The volumes I was saying earlier is something around 15 trolleys per day of clothing. We're talking big packed trolleys. About half of that is actually making it into the shop. The other half is unfit for it. So either it's going to be made as rags, or we're sending some good items to other smaller op shops, and especially in Dunedin, that we have partnerships with, and who don't have as many donations as we do. A portion of that is regularly going to Vanuatu as well, especially summery items in winter. And a small portion of it, when it is impossible for us to find a stream for it, unfortunately ends in the landfill. So things that are ending in the landfills are things that are too ripped to be repaired, things that have a bad smell, things that are full of paint, items that have been worn so much that they actually fall in pieces, or things like that. So this item we consider they're at the end of their life, and we're okay with it. But it's all the rest of, like I was telling you, those kind of shoes that are like a little bit in between, that is kind of problematic for us. So yeah, I don't know if it answers to your question about the volumes, but yeah, about 15 trolleys.
And we've got two last quick questions. What's the biggest resale item? So is there a number one item that's the easiest to resell?
In clothing?
Yeah.
In clothing, anything in merino.
Nice. Go Mons.
Yeah, exactly. And we do have a lot of Mons items coming through the shop, a lot.
Oh.
And even if they have a few holes, people are always happy to have them as layers and to use them and so on. And the second thing that I want to mention is unique items. So those one-off items that everyone gets really excited about. They usually go through the door and make someone really happy.
Something special.
Yeah, and sometimes it might not be special for the person who dropped it off at all. So
interesting, which they shouldn't have bought in the first place. You know, if we were hearing
exactly.
But it's gone to someone else. And last question: what's the fault that most often needs repairing? Like, is there a particular garment or a place within sleeves? Yeah, which makes sense.
Sleeves is definitely the number one, and colors as well, especially I was showing for baby items. This is the number one thing that we have an issue with, is those big large color that are just impossible to fix.
Maybe Mons can help me. I've got quite a few work shirts with collars, and the top of the collars have gone, and like the shirt's fine. It's like, but it gets to a point where it just looks really untidy going into a business meeting.
But it's
maybe turn your collar up, or turn my collar over. Yeah, I'll send them down to Fiona. Any final thoughts from you, Lillian, in terms of prolonging the life of a garment?
I think it's just about caring for them, and that initial buy, I guess, is my sort of thought on it all. But yeah, and also putting the time and effort into repairing, because sometimes it can actually sort of benefit and improve the garment as well. So making the time to repair, I think, is something that's worth doing, because it's actually quite a rewarding process.
Nice. Fantastic. Oh, well, thank you two so much for your insights and ideas. That was all super cool. And stop getting branded material with just your face on it and sending it to Mathilde, because she's sick of seeing your ugly mugs coming in.
Caps are a big one. Thank you.
Fantastic. Cool. Jacinta, have you got anything you want to pop in with? She's gone to make a cup of tea.
I was just typing a question, actually, which was, I really wanted to ask Lillian, are there any like websites or tutorials or YouTube videos or any sort of places people could go to get some tips on how to do some repair?
Yeah, there's actually one woman who's based in Australia, and her name's Molly Martin, and she's just spent a lot of her time focusing on, and she even has a book called The Art of Repair, and you can follow her, and she does heaps of podcasts. She has a beautiful book, and she's quite philosophical about it all, and just does it in such a beautiful way that makes it really inspiring. And another woman, Seela Pym, Pym, she's American based and has just definitely a great example of someone that's turned sometimes quite a dated style of darning into something very contemporary. So they're two people I'd suggest to look out for. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
And I will take some advice from the some of the suggestions here, and I'll go and see if I can repair my shirt collars. I'll give it a go. Maybe we'll get me back next year, Monique, and I'll show you how it went. We did have one other, we had a question to the hosts and the panelists. Are there any links for polyester recycling, upselling, responsible disposal? Monique's holding me to that as well. This could be dangerous. The one, there is one I know of called Blocktex, which is in Australia, where they are recycling cotton poly mixes, and basically they've got this proprietary technology that pulls it apart with a I think some kind of chemical function, which leaves you with cellulose and recycled polyester. So that's the main one that I know of. Usefully World are working on this for NZ now. So yeah, maybe connect with Jacinta. She'll be the font of all fashion knowledge. And if she doesn't know it, she'll know the person that does know it, if you've got any specific questions like that. Cool. So we are moving quickly into our third and final session, where we have Fiona, who has been putting in plenty of useful tips and tricks in the chats, so check them out. And we have Sam from Little Yellow Bird. So if you two would like to, what would be the word? I was going to say unmute your video, but that doesn't work. I don't know. It's the word now.
Someone else will have to turn my video on. They've turned it off.
Can't help you on that one, but hey. Is it working? Oh, there we go. Hey, you're back in the room. Cool. So we are, I guess there's been quite a lot of interest already from some of the comments and questions around, the end of life and what should happen and what does happen to a garment at the end of life. So maybe we'll go to Sam first, because she's clearly, being a Jones, we've got to keep the Joneses going. Yeah, what end of life garments, what is it, what happens at the minute? A lot of them are clearly going to places like Wastebusters and going to landfill, but that's something that I know Little Yellow Bird doesn't want to have happen. So tell us about what you know about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, we have had a take back, I guess, scheme operating for a couple of years now. We started that back in, I think, 2018, but we didn't really have a solution for that. It was simply just send us your products back at the end of life. And I guess once you start with that approach, the more that you get back, the more, I guess, incentive there is for you to find a solution. And so we spent quite a bit of time working out different solutions, and we had identified a solution to trial a kind of a funny sort of turn of events. Actually, back in our early days, had definitely had some major production failures, but we didn't obviously want to send any of those products to landfill. So that was sort of, I guess, one of our very early reasonings behind trying to find solutions. And we had identified a solution for this particular production era, but it was perfectly good fabric, beautiful organic fabric, just the specs were really out. And so we had identified the solution, COVID came along, and because upcycling is definitely higher value than recycling, we actually ended up turning those products into roughly, I think it was about 5,000 face masks. So we were almost back to square one with, we didn't have any stock really to trial some of these systems that we had identified. And so that's what then kicked off, I guess, our thought process around collaborating with other partners. And so we set up an initiative called Circular Cotton. It sort of officially kicked off this year, but that's with 8 other brands as well. It's a membership-based program. And we've been piloting different textile to textile, chemical, mechanical, as well as local sort of, different options where we work with we're working with some underwear companies, some dog toy bedding type of companies as well to repurpose textiles to divert them from landfill.
Very cool. And Fiona, tell us about what you're up to.
Kia ora. I just actually need to introduce myself properly because otherwise I'm not really in this room. So kia ora koutou, ko Takitimu te Mauka, ko Aparima te Awa, ko te ara kiwa te Moana, ko Takitimu, rawa ko Urua, rawa ko Wairoa, rawa ko Viola, rawa ko Lady Igadia, rawa ko Mermaid o ku Waka, ko Kaitahu Kati Mamoe Waitaha o ku Iwi, ko Clan Gordon-aho, ko Takatau te Titi te Marae, no Otipoti tuku Kāinga Inaine, ko Paul tuku Mātua, ko Glenys tuku Whaia, ko Fiona tuku Ikua. Kia ora. So predominantly for the past 12 years, I've been working zero waste. So I use the kind of zero waste hierarchy to inform my practice, which means kind of going all the way to the start of the process, which is redesign. So how do we design the waste out? Because we do know that when you're making a garment, we have at least 15 to 30% of the textile is wasted during that process. So I spent a lot of time creating zero waste patterns and working from manufacturers' offcuts, which I've got a few of my pieces sitting behind me here.
Nice.
I managed to create some really great pieces, like this one on the end is a zero waste dungaree. The entire pattern is one rectangle, so it can just fit onto a piece of fabric, and there is absolutely no waste in the creation of that garment. I also predominantly use found textiles. I don't buy them unless they're from a secondhand store or it's been upcycled from some other place. But I also set up Stitch Kitchen, which is a community sewing room about 6 years ago. We don't really work with garments themselves, but we predominantly work with textiles. And so we're a haberdashery shop. We run workshops. We teach people how to repair and fix and make from scratch as well. And it works really well because they're actually doing that practical process and they're learning how a garment is put together. Once you know how a garment is put together, you really do understand how much effort and energy and time and labor is really put into that. Because every single seam on your garment is sewn by someone different in the manufacturing system most of the time. And they're sitting there sewing the same seam over and over again. And every seam is about a kind of $1 worth of time and effort, really. So, I mean, the system's pretty, it's not in good shape at the moment, I guess is what I would say. We really do need to create that circular system. We've got some really great people working on that here in New Zealand. Usefully World have been trying to do this for a few years. But the key thing with that is that we really need to get textiles on the government's agenda as a priority product. So we've got a waste management strategy that's actually out right now for consultation, I think. And textiles aren't on the list, but they are one of the top 3 that create the greenhouse gas emissions. And we know they're ending up in our landfill because there's too many of them for us to even use or wear consistently. We're actually creating, we all know that we're creating far too many. And so that system that they're trying to work on is really important that we actually all get involved with it and start participating, because the more collaborative we can be, the better we're really going to do at getting out of this hole. And I actually do truly believe that we could create a very circular system in New Zealand. We're small enough and quite capable of doing that. We've got that number 8 wire kind of mentality, and we can totally do it. It's
nice.
Really awesome.
That's I think the thing you mentioned there that really hits for me is we've really lost the connection between how things are made and how we use them. And like you say, if you sat and watched someone make a t-shirt or your shirt or your pair of trousers or your dungarees, you'd have a deeper appreciation for actually maybe I shouldn't just throw that out because I've seen the blood, sweat and tears and effort that was put in to make it. So I think that's systematic of just the wider world. We're just so disconnected from everything that we consume that we're not grateful for the effort that's been put into it.
We're absolutely not.
Yeah. So maybe we'll flip back to Sam. Like, so what are the barriers to creating a circular economy when it comes to fashion, clothing, textile, as you see it?
Well, I guess for us, so we've set up an aggregation point. We have a warehouse in Porirua where we collect end-of-life textile waste. So our own products are free to return to us forever, but we're also starting to collect other brands' products as well through either our membership-based program, or we also have a take-back bag, which people can purchase off our website, fill it up with product and send it back to us. But our biggest challenges are really the cost involved. So it's an incredibly labour-intensive process to go through and sort, and we're sort of tackling this and jumping in with it's a whole new field for us, and a lot of the solutions that we've looked at, in particular the fibre to fibre solution, which is really a pilot, a test really, because we do have to send that to Europe, and it's not the ideal scenario. We'd really like to see more solutions here. But a lot of the textiles that we're dealing with are really end of life. So Alsco, for example, is one of our biggest partners, and it's they're like overalls that have really like, they've been repaired so many times. There's really nothing that of too much value that we could do with that, but the time and expense, and even since we initially started this project, cost of transport has almost doubled.
Wow.
Even accessing a container is difficult. But finding or having access to infrastructure that we need in New Zealand to keep more of these resources and keep more of that loop and jobs here as well as a barrier, and that comes down to funding as well a lot of the time. So yeah, lots of challenges, but we've also learnt lots in this process, and part of our particular project is really a pilot project to learn and inform, and then how could we do this on a bigger scale here as well.
Nice. Anything from you on that, Fiona?
Yeah, I'm there's so many things that are there's just so much. I've been taking notes this whole time everyone's been talking, and there's just so many things that we can do to make a difference. But also the responsibility isn't just on us at the end of that life. It really has to be on the producers who are making it, because if they were putting in a bit of cash into a system that would actually go and pay for the recycling, then it would actually really work. It's the same as like a container return scheme for our beverage bottles and that sort of thing. Like, we really need to be funding that somehow, because like, I know that it's great what you're doing, Sam, but you're probably having to fund that in some kind of way, or having to apply for funding or create some kind of system where it's actually not draining your capital resources and that sort of thing too. So, like, I think that's a really important thing. And if we're doing it together and we're all talking and we're sharing our information, then it's really going to be much easier.
There was in the wool session yesterday, I mentioned it. In Australia, they have, it's called the ANZPR, I think it is, which is a what's the word I'm looking for? It's like it's the product buyback scheme, basically. End of life for e-waste. So if you are, Mr. Brother Computers or Mrs. Hewlett Packard Computers importing products into Australia, you pay a levy at import, which goes to the government. So at the end of life, you take your e-waste to one of the designated centres, and it's free for the consumer to drop that waste off. Whereas in New Zealand, if you want to go and if you've got an old laptop that has been repaired 4 times and it's at the end of life, it's typically on you to go and pay some money for someone to go and dispose of that ethically. And so, yeah, I think that would be a big step forward. Are there any places in the world that you would see as being, I guess, like, really nailing a circular economy, or have got this full supply chain from designing better all the way through to product end of life? Yeah, any amazing examples out there?
Specifically for textiles, none that I know of.
There's certainly places that are doing better at it, but yeah, it's a global problem. But just to jump back to that previous point around brands needing to take responsibility and to cost it in. So we cost the end of life element into our products up front. And I do think that's a really simple way that if more brands did that, and that's the reasoning behind why we charge for our textile take back bags, because it's not our responsibility to subsidize that cost for other brands. There's a cost involved to us to recycle it. But it's important because we need more product to reach scale to even test out these sort of technologies for our own products. But also there's a really big need and a big drive for people going along this journey or trying to have a more sustainable wardrobe to want to be able to do something with those products when they're at the very end of their life. So that is positive, but yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the solution is for the whole country, but I too agree that we are such a small country that we could, within not many years actually get to a reasonable solution. But there has to be, I guess, an incentive as well. And so many of our competitors are, bringing in and importing t-shirts for $4 or $5. So if they were to then take the cost of recycling as a percentage, that would be a huge percentage for them. But in a way, that's also not looking at it the right way, because a $4 t-shirt shouldn't even be getting to our shores in the first place. So I think one of the things that I've really noticed with circularity as well, especially with some of these big brands, is that they're using it as sort of the permission to shop, and they're not actually considering the upfront cost or the upfront how the product is made. They're really just using that to try and get you to buy more. So it comes back again to just buying less, buying quality. Because circularity, as many of the other panelists have sort of already pointed out, is not the answer. There's always resources that go into even the highest quality of products.
Totally. Anything to add to that, Fiona? No.
Well, I know that we have 220,800,000 kilos going to New Zealand's landfill of clothing every year.
So just a few.
Just a little bit. And a lot of that, some of that's imported apparel, some of that is what we're making on shore, but we're not, we actually don't have a system on shore where we can actually manufacture as much as we really want to as a system anyway. But how many of those clothes are we really wearing, right? Like how much, how much can we really wear in a year? Well, how much do we need to shop? I mean, I don't. My everything's secondhand or made by myself, or I repair it, or I love NISA and what they're doing, and it's if we can support the people that are doing the good things, then it's really awesome. But I also think that we're all speaking from a really privileged position of accessibility in this scenario. Like there are a lot of people out there that do not even have the opportunity to purchase a high quality product. They have to shop at Kmart or the warehouse or wherever it is, and they don't have the option to always purchase that great thing. But what's great now is there are a few, like merino and other things coming through into those systems that are good. But I guess when you get to the real end of life, and if you're wanting to do things like compost your clothing and things like that, you can only do that with natural fibers, and you can only really do it natural fibers that don't have dye in them as well. So because that's when they end up in landfill in an anaerobic environment, that's what's breaking down and leaching, and chemicals and toxic things are coming out of it. That's really what we don't want, because that's creating the greenhouse gas emissions. So the case for hemp and mushrooms and plant-based leathers and wool and silk, for me, those are the things I'm always going to gravitate towards, because I know at the end of its life I could dig a hole and put it in my garden, or I can use that wool. Wool is a great thing for the garden, it retains water, it keeps your plants warm. It's, if that jersey's got past it, but we don't all have gardens to do that in either, right? So, I think there's a whole bunch there that we can think about, as Jacinta said, when you're purchasing, what questions do you ask yourself before you actually buy that item?
Nice. Fiona, that example of your dungarees cut from one rectangle, like that is just genius as far as I'm concerned. What other things do you need to take into consideration when we're thinking about a circular based product? Like what other considerations do you have? And then I'll come to you, Sam, with the same question.
Well, I guess there's some, I guess they'd use the example of Holly McQuillan. She's a New Zealander, but she's been over in Sweden, I think, doing her PhD, and she's a zero waste designer, and she's been weaving multiple layers, weaving clothing using multiple layers of which are zero waste. So, you know, through that one woven process, there's maybe 2 or 3 garments that she's designed, and you know, it gets cut up into pieces and then sewn together. So they're actually weaving it right from the start of the design, and I just think that's fabulous. You know, like there's some great things like that are happening. We've got people using things like orange waste to create leathers, or pineapple leathers and mushroom leathers, and even kombucha, you know, like there's people playing around with it. I made the joke the other day with my friends that the new bush shirt's going to be the new boot shirt. Because, you know, like we've got so many amazing products out there that we actually that actually could be fully circular. They just, you know, we just need a bit of time to actually properly create them and get through that kind of systematic process of you know, that wear and tear and how long will it last and all that sort of stuff that you need to create a good product.
Yep.
Yeah.
To add to that, the thing that I've really enjoyed about our circularity journey has been seeing products that have come in after, you know, 100 washes or more. I have no idea, but we can tell, you know, sort of what series of garment it would have been because of the evolution of our logo as well. And nice. You know, you can do your 20, you know, 20, 30, whatever wash trial, but to really get that data from really people actually wearing the product for a number of years, and then seeing it and seeing how you could improve it to increase longevity has been really valuable. So again, that really, really close, I guess, connection with your customer in terms of actually taking back the waste product and then seeing, oh, actually, if we tweaked the neckline like this, then maybe it wouldn't, you know, curl or wrinkle like this, or could we, you know, reinforce this stitch, or where's the like commonality of the, areas that we could improve these garments on. And I think that's really important, because then it takes you all the way back to the design phase again to go, how can I make this a better garment? And that's, I think, really, really valuable information. And it would be awesome if that was standard practice, because then ultimately we were just going to have a higher quality product being made as well.
I mean, is this kind of being taught in colleges, schools, you know, where people learn or get into the fashion industry? Because obviously, Sam, you come from a fairly tangential background to the fashion industry. Coming from I
don't know, because I didn't study fashion at all. I'm not even very interested in fashion. I was just interested in the human rights and environmental kind of side of it, but my specialty is in supply chains. So I came from a military background, actually, managed logistical supply chains. And so that's sort of been my random entry into this world.
Random's good.
I mean, I do think that they're teaching more of this, but I'm not sure if it's maybe the foundation that it should be.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. It's probably not the foundation it needs to be, but there are like the zero waste, what are they called? Zero waste design online. It's one of Holly McQuillan's groups. They've actually created an online learning research and it's community as well. It's any homemakers that they can get together. There's the Slow Factory as well as doing education and stuff online. I think there needs to be more of it. I know that my local Polytech, and not that I want to speak badly of them, but I know that they do teach some, but they don't teach enough. I know that when I was there 10 years ago, they weren't really teaching much at all. I had to learn on my own. But I'm glad I did learn on my own, because I found the things that really interested me and you know, really created that passion around zero waste for myself. But, you know, I think there is definitely a key factor that we need to be teaching more of this, especially right from the design perspective, because that's where we can actually get a lot of the waste out, and we can actually start thinking about it as a full life cycle.
Nice. I kind of feel if there's any country in the world that could come together and solve a really gnarly problem, it's probably going to be good old Aotearoa, New Zealand. We seem to have got a pretty good history of going, hang on a minute, this seems really stuffed. I think we can do this better. And maybe that's the the sort of the silver, or I don't know, like the shining light for New Zealand is that we could maybe be the country that cracks that circular fashion textile, crack that nut, and then we can export that as our little gift to the world.
I think definitely Kiwis, and I saw this in the military as well, where you're just willing to give anything a go or a try. And that's sort of been our philosophy with our project, because we didn't necessarily know what we were getting into or the answers to everything, but you only discover half of the answers once you've got the actual problem in front of you. So, I mean, that's definitely why it's taking longer and probably a bit more painful than maybe it needs to be. But I think that even making small steps is really crucial to solving this problem for the nation.
And sometimes the theoretical isn't what the practical turns out to be. So I think, just
so much
having a go, it's like, we don't know until we give it a go.
Especially when it comes to textiles and making, like if you're a sewer, you'll know it takes so much longer than you actually think to actually make that garment. Like you'll plan 4 or 5 hours, but you're actually there for 12,
Nice. We've got another question from Sophie, very specific question. Is the textile industry doing a joint submission into the New Zealand waste strategy? And if so, it would be great to share that around. I don't know if that's a thing for either of you.
I think usefully is. I haven't checked up on that recently because I've kind of shifted into not just textiles but all waste and resource recovery as a kind of focus myself. So I've kind of put them in as kind of larger resource recovery waste mobilisation sector.
Is that something you're involved with, Sam?
I believe that Usefully is the ones that are leading.
They're sort of leading it as an industry group. Cool. Awesome. Any final questions from the audience? I can't see any. Any final thoughts from you two in terms of what can we do to have better end of life solutions? What would be your take home message?
Polyester.
Don't buy polyester.
Like, stop buying polyester, and if you're washing it, use a Guppy Friend bag or get a microfiber filter for your washing machine.
Taking care of your products, and then finding out which can go where. Definitely don't throw them in the garbage if they're cotton or natural fibers. There's definitely better alternatives out there even now, even though many of them are sort of just in the early stages.
Nice. And Fiona might be answering the question that she's been posed to her. Yes. So you do those workshops?
I don't personally do any myself. I've recently shifted into new business doing all of waste instead of just textiles, really. So I've kind of shifted out of doing that kind of thing. But Stitch Kitchen's here to help if you're in Dunedin or passing through. It's right next door.
Nice. And a last question from Jacinta to Sam. Where do we send our cotton?
Rag. Please rag it. Or to Little Yellow Bird.
Our take back bags come with a return courier label, so you can fill them up and send them to us. We're starting to get more drop-off points. So Sustainability Trust is another drop-off point, and from there we would either work out is there something local we can do with it. If not, then it might go into a mechanical or chemical recycling process.
Nice. Super cool. Oh, well, thank you both ever so much for giving up your Saturday evening to come and talk to these amazing people listening. And thank you for all the amazing work you're doing. So, thank you. Back to Jacinta.
Back to me. I think this is the end of the session. Is that right?
That's the end of the session. Yeah, we're done.
I've got a few takeaways. It's been really interesting. I'm keen to hear if you have any as well, Tim. I mean, for me, it sounds like there's like a range of systemic issues that we've been talking about, how things are designed, and then what happens to them at the end of their life, because at the moment there's a massive problem at that end of life stage. So we need to kind of come back to the beginning and design them right from the beginning, and also get that system in place at the end. So that whole systemic thing as a huge industry-wide challenge that we've been talking about a lot. But then there's also this side of if you're a shopper, what do you actually do? And there's been some really cool things that have come through from each of the different panel discussions that I really picked up on, about being intentional with how you buy, buying good quality stuff that you love, and considering like what you will actually be able to do with it when you no longer are able to wear it. And then, I mean, something that I would just like do a shout out for buying from supporting these local businesses that have been talking tonight, because as they're showing you, like, New Zealand businesses are doing the work. There's some amazing, amazing brands in New Zealand actually working on cracking the nut of the circular economy and doing a really good job. So yeah, really cool to hear everyone's stories. That would be my takeaways.
Totally. Pretty much the same. I think, repair, keep it going for as long as you can. And I think for me, that, fall in love with the item of clothing that or the textile that you're buying. Like, have something that you want to have for a long time, not, have it for a long time, not a good time. I think those would be sort of my two main ones. And yeah, certainly buy local, because then you're, hopefully you're minimizing things like air miles and other things. We didn't really get a chance to sort of unpack with Alicia and Sam, because obviously, they also have a very socially ethical supply chain as well as environmentally ethical. And I guess that's a whole other area that we haven't really explored in this section, because we've been focused more on the garment and the material. But yeah, and I like what you were doing, just into like actually messaging the company. So just tell me a little bit more about what you're actually doing here and what's your ideas behind that. So yeah, amazing stuff.
Yeah, but I would just like to add, buy for a long time, but also sometimes for a good time. I think sometimes it can be for a good time.
Nice.
Hey, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks to our incredible speakers for staying up on a Saturday night and sharing their stories with us and with all the audience. And thanks to Monique from Wow for smoothly running this event online and switching at the last minute. Well done to the whole team. Really, really good. Yeah, ka kite. Thank you so much.
That 9 o'clock on the dot.
Ah, perfect.
Hopefully Fred's still here to help us sort out how we finish this thing.
That is awesome. I can end now if you like. I just wanted to do a huge shout out. Thank you so much, guys. That was incredible conversation. And I can't believe that 2 hours have already gone by and we still haven't unpacked everything yet. I definitely think there's a huge place for what has been screaming out at every single sector, no matter what it is buy less, use less, do less, do things you love because you love them. So it's quality, whether it's time with tourism, whether it's energy, just become more efficient, whether it's fashion, this is where we need to go. And also the other thing is collaboration. I think that is a huge part of where we're going, is this collaborative effort to get things done. And it's super, I was really excited to be part of that discussion yesterday to see where that collaboration is going. But I think it needs to become more diverse just after this conversation, to get the likes of Wastebusters in there and Fee with a different perspective coming at the end of the life cycle, and knowing, well, how do you actually put things into the system in the first place that are going to be in that second downstream of quality. So I'm really excited. So thank you all for coming out tonight. And now I get to sleep in a little bit tomorrow morning, and we long lunch out at Glendew Station. sip a little wine, socially distanced context.
Nice. Monique, thanks so much. It's great. Like, I think the more conversations that everybody's having, the more momentum the concept will get. And yeah, we just need to keep the conversations going, really. So it's been an amazing platform, the summit, to have all these events. And yeah, yesterday was super valuable, and I think tonight it was just great to hear everybody's point of view. So thank you very much for creating the platform to say the words.
Well, we wouldn't be here, I think, without the support of everyone. And we just provide the crucible, but if we get the companies on board that are helping support us, Salmons have been a big supporter, Wastebusters right from the beginning as well, Untouched World are here, we've got Sam and Alicia here now. You're dragged into the crew, guys, sorry. It's I think that's where it is providing this platform. I'm just putting an idea out there, but I think next year, one of the biggest strategies we have going forward is saying October, like Summit's all about having this big gong of action every year to get momentum going on all fronts. And we need that not just at a local little Wanaka basis, but we need it at a national basis. And what would it look like to have an Aotearoa Climate Action Month in October every year, and we all get on board and we all do different things, but we don't just look at that climate action and silo it out. We actually have to look at it in a really holistic sense from I think my thing would be with framework is that the Sustainable Development Goals or whatever sustainable framework that you like, but we need to look at well-being, we need to look at people, we need to look at climate, we need to look at air, sea, water, we need to look at people. I
think that's great. Like the annual health check and the check-in is awesome. Like, you need that, and deadlines are great, aren't they? Just if you know it's coming, you just do it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Anybody on board, or everybody on board? I think we just do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, so mission for next year, everybody, is going to be coming back. I think that this as well, this has provided huge amount of content for change. I was at one young woman who came with her tiny baby to the summit, and she has been there for 2.5 days straight in the rural sector. So looking at the food, she had the food and fibre pass, and she was feeding her little 3-month-old during an Indigenous biodiversity workshop. And I sat down with her and just sort of asking her, and we introduced each other, and she said, "Oh my God, you're Monique. Oh my God, I listened to you with Tim Jones on the podcast." And that inspired her to come all the way from Ranfurly to come down to learn more about food and fibre in her sector. And she's got this little regenerative business that she sparked up and got going. And it's so wicked because just from one conversation, which I don't know how many people were actually listening in at the time, but she listened to it afterwards, there was this huge change. And I think that this is the advantage of also being online, is there are so many parts of what you have said tonight, guys, that I am going to cut out. And we were speaking with Jacinta going, God, we need to get this. How are we going to capture this? So just be prepared. We've got you recorded.
Gosh.
Thank you. Shall I? It's already 9:05. I will do the signing out. Thank you, everybody, from the bottom of my heart and our heart as a crew. I know that some of them are listening in. So thank you all, and ka kite. See you later.
Good night.
Thanks,
Bye, everyone.
Good night.